So Tucker Carlson went on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he gave us a number of, let's be kind and say, interesting moments. So we're going to dive into a bunch of them here. Right off the bat, I'm going to start with the most pathetic one. And you could actually see here that Rogan is like visibly stunned by what Tucker's saying in this clip. Tucker is going to deny evolution and smugly and arrogantly act like, well, obviously evolution's not true. This is wild. Let's dive in.
Evolution is real. And if there is this constant...
it real?
I don't know. But it's visible. Like, you can measure it in certain animals.
You can measure adaptation.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence that evolution... In fact, I think we've kind of given up on the idea of evolution. The theory of evolution as articulated by Darwin is like kind of not true. Right?
In what sense?
Look at his face. Look at his face. All Rogan had to do is say, in what sense is evolution not true? And this is the dog that just caught the car. That's what this face is right here. How can you casually say something so verifiably incorrect? Watch, I'm going to break it down for you in a minute, but he conflates two different things, which is very common to conflate among like super Christian types. I don't know if he's particularly Christian, but like it's a very common thing that you hear in like fundamentalist evangelical Christian circles. But like it astonishingly incorrect. Let's keep going.
Well, in the most basic sense, the idea that, all life emerged from a single cell organism and over time, and there would be a fossil record of that, and there's not. And
there's not a fossil record of transitionary species, like species that are adapting to its environment.
There's
and
tons of record of
Right.
adaptation, and you see it in your own life. I mean, I have a lot of dogs. I see adaptation in dogs, through the
Sure.
Litter to litter. But no, there's no evidence at all zero, that people evolve seamlessly from a single cell amoeba. No, there's not. There's no chain in the fossil record of that at all. And that's why you don't actually hear people, you hear them make reference to evolution because the theory of adaptation is clearly, obviously true. But Darwin's theory's totally, that's why it's still a theory almost 200 years later.
Oh my God.
No, we have not.
Oh my God. He doesn't know the difference between a theory and a hypothesis in scientific terms. He doesn't know the difference. Guys, when somebody says, I have a theory in like colloquial, regular conversation, when somebody says, I have a theory on this, that's that person saying, yeah, this is what I think is the case. I'm not totally sure, but this is what I think. This is my theory. That's only for casual conversation. In scientific terms, a theory is nearly ironclad. He's conflating a theory and a hypothesis. The hypothesis is the thing in science that's like, look, we really don't know. We think it might be this, but we're going to have to like test it out. Like the theory of gravity is a theory. Would you say, gravity, that's not true? That's not true. We debunked that one, bro. Oh my God. Oh, this is like the sad, this is like all of the Reddit atheists from like 2007 are going to pop out of the woodworks here and lay the smackdown on Tucker Carlson's ass for that one. You don't know the difference between a hypothesis and a theory in scientific terms, and that a theory is nearly ironclad? Oh my God.
And I can't even guess. I have my own theories on it, but they're not proven.
What are your theories?
God created people.
So remember before I said he conflates two things? Here are the two things he's conflating. He's conflating evolution, which is, definitionally how we evolved over time, right? And this thing called abiogenesis, which is what is the first life form ever created and how did it come about, right? Those are two different topics. Those are not the same. We know for sure that evolution is real. And it's almost like he admits that while not admitting it, because what does he say? Like, oh, adaptation is obviously real. Well, that's kind of what people mean when they say evolution, right? So evolution is real, 100%. But he's conflating that with abiogenesis, as if like the beginning of a life form for the first time ever is the same thing as evolution. That is not the same thing. Those are two totally different things and totally different fields of study. And you're right to point out that when it comes to abiogenesis, we know a hell of a lot less than we know about evolution. There's all sorts of hypotheses out there when it comes to abiogenesis. The one that, when I read about this like a decade ago, the one that stuck with me the most was that there was primordial soup, and you had a lightning strike hit the primordial soup, and that started the first ever living organism. That, you know, the fact that this primordial soup got hit with lightning was enough to spark something, which then started the process of evolution, and then over time, obviously, everything kind of developed from that, right? But again, two totally separate topics. So for him to say, God is real and he created us, even if you believe that, that is in no way, shape, or form debunking evolution. And in fact, if he were to continue down this line of logic, he would fall on the God of the gaps argument, right? That wherever there's a gap in the fossil record, we'll invoke God to come in and sort of perfect the thing so that the complexity and the order of it is set by a higher being. But of course, Tucker, the obvious rebuttal to that is if living things need a God to perfect them, right? If living things need a God to get all the nuance and the complexity and the detail just right, then by that logic, God, since he's even more intricate and complex and detailed, would need like a super God to make the God. And then the super God would need like a super God to make the super God who made us, right? So it's not, you can't just draw a clean line and be like, God. That poses more questions than it answers. Now, by the way, am I here saying it's definitely the case that there's no God? No, I don't fucking know. The difference between me and him is I have the humility to say, when I don't know, I would consider myself an agnostic atheist. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I don't think there's any evidence for a God. But I'm comfortable saying I don't know because I don't have all the answers. He's saying evolution is not real, false, and God made us. I mean, you want to talk about comments that aren't real, that can't be backed up. Jesus Christ. All right, let's keep going.
God created people, you know, distinctly, and animals. I mean, I think what every person on Earth thought until the mid-19th century, actually.
Right, but
it's not a new idea.
Okay, first of all, what the fuck was that laugh? Second of all, does he think that's like a debate ending point? People believed this for a really, really, really long time, bro. There's got to be some wisdom in it. Well, people also thought the fucking world was flat. People thought that the stars in the sky, it was God poking holes through the sky, and the light shining through was the light of heaven shining through. People believed all sorts of preposterous things and still do believe all sorts of preposterous things. That's not an argument.
Every person on Earth thought until the mid-19th century, actually.
Right, but
it's not a new idea.
They didn't have computers. They didn't have a general understanding that we have today of the process.
Do you think we understand more now?
Yes.
Really?
You don't think that we understand more today?
We understand way less. We understand so little that...
Did you just say we understand way less now? Did he say that?
Really?
You don't think that we understand more today?
We understand way less. We understand so little that...
I think he said we understand way less. But one more time. Am I hearing this wrong, guys? You tell me in the comment section. It sounds like he's saying, Rogan's like, yeah, we understand more now, and he's saying we understand way less.
Do we understand more today?
We understand way less. We understand so little.
Yeah, he's saying we understand way less now than what we did in 1728. That's an insane point to make. That's insane.
That we're actually sitting here allowing like a bunch of greedy, stupid, childless software engineers in Northern California to like flirt with the extinction of mankind.
Okay, you can be strategically stupid. You could be like on the wrong trajectory with the things that you're interested in. But you can also have like more data and information and facts. So we obviously have more data and information and facts today than we did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Right? I mean, how is that something anybody can argue against? Okay, all right. We're just getting started on this, bro. Now we're going to get to talk about aliens/ghosts, or I don't... You tell me what he's talking about here.
So they're from here, and they've been here for thousands of years, whatever they are. And it's pretty clear to me that they're spiritual entities, whatever that means. They're supernatural, and which is to say, supernatural means above the natural, above the observable nature. And they don't behave according to the laws of science as measured by people, you know, and they've been here for a long time. And there's a ton of evidence that are under the ocean and under the ground. So, like, with that fact set, what do you conclude?
There's spiritual entities. Spiritual entities. One more time. I'm trying to be fair. I really am. I'm trying to, like, hear it out. Think of, like, steel manning it. I'm struggling.
From here, and they've been here for thousands of years.
Who's they?
Whatever they are. And it's pretty clear to me that they're spiritual entities, whatever that means. They're supernatural, and which is
spiritual or supernatural entities. So people are talking like, oh, he's referring to aliens. I think you could say aliens are like ghosts or something like that.
Supernaturals means above the natural, above the observable.
I think he goes on to say they don't come from a different planet, and he says here that they come from here. So then does he mean ghosts? He's not talking about aliens as in like from another planet. So you mean ghosts or spiritual entities? Spirits? I don't...
Nature. And they don't behave according to the laws of science as measured by people, you know, and they've been here for a long time. And there's a ton of evidence that are under the ocean and under the ground. So, like, with that fact set, what do you conclude? Okay,
he's kind of doing like a Alex Jones type impression here, right? He's kind of doing that because Jones talked about something similar when he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. I don't know. I find this whole conversation, this part, so silly. Like, nobody knows. You don't know. I don't know. Again, my default perspective would be there's really no evidence for aliens or ghosts or spirits or whatever. That's my default perspective. But I'm more than happy to say I'm agnostic. I don't know. I don't know. Any conversation about stuff like this that doesn't begin and end with, I don't fucking know, it's hard for me to take seriously. It is. All right. Again, we're just getting going. So now we got some 9/11 stuff.
What's the justification for classifying any document around 9/11? There's no justification.
Well, the same justification in classifying the documents about the Kennedy assassination.
Well, exactly, 61 years later.
Yeah, or releasing the COVID vaccine data 75 years later.
Of course.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer. I really don't know the answer, but there is one. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's not methods and sources. You think it's methods and sources? Trying to protect their Saudi sources? I don't think so.
You know, the wildest thing about Tower 7 is that if you just say it looks like a controlled demolition, people get mad at you.
Why?
Well, I don't know.
Well,
because I'm not saying that it is a controlled demolition, but I'm saying if you watch it, it looks like a controlled demolition.
But that happens all the time. Buildings catch fire and they just implode in on themselves. I think it happens every week, right? All these poultry plants and manufacturing plants that keep getting burned through fire, they all like...
It's the way it went down.
Yeah. So I say, why do they respond that way? And of course, I responded that way. And I think, looking back, the reason that I did was because if you call that into question, you had to ask a lot of other really obvious questions you didn't want to deal with. And you might arrive at the conclusion that a lot of your most basic assumptions are false and that you've been had. And it's just too destabilizing, maybe.
Right.
Look, Tucker's clearly flirting with the notion of 9/11 conspiracy theory or 9/11 trutherism, the idea that perhaps the U.S. government was behind 9/11. Okay, but just say that then, right? I don't know. As I get older, I have less of a tolerance for this, like, I'm going to flirt with this thing, but not actually say it, bro. And if you accuse me of saying it, then you're being dishonest, bro. Gotcha. It's like, all right, look, you want to have this conversation? You want to be edgy? Okay. Then just say, yeah, I think maybe it was done by the United States. I mean, then it would be more bold, right? It'd be more bold. It'd be more honest. But it's just like flirting with it, leaving himself the wiggle room where if somebody accuses him of being a 9/11 truther, he'd be like, no. All right, more.
Tower 7 is they go, well, okay, if it was a controlled demolition, how was that engineered? Did they just decide to do that before September 11th? And you know how long it would take to rig a building like that?
Right.
Or was it built into the building? And how would they know it would even work? And how would they do something like that? And how would there not be a record of it being built into the building?
It's interesting because now Rogan is arguing against the idea.
For someone to engineer
and where's the sound
collapse of a
signature
tower
on the tape? There would be a sound of the explosions going
bang,
on.
bang, bang, bang.
Which is
okay. They're both arguing against it now.
a question.
Yeah, so a lot of fair questions. And has there ever been a building that experienced a tremendous amount of damage because two enormous skyscrapers fell right next to it, damaged it, and then massive fires started, and then there's diesel generators that are in the basement, so they have all this fuel, so they have this incredible inferno in the basement that weakens the structure. And is that
okay? They're steel manning the non-truther position.
it collapsed? Maybe.
Totally possible.
Yeah.
A lot of building engineers disagree with that, as you know.
Yeah.
And they don't think that could have happened in the way you just described. I'm agnostic on it. What I know, because I don't know the answer, and I have no way of knowing. All I know is that there's no justification for keeping those documents secret that I can think of. And if there is, tell us what it is. No one has bothered because nobody presses. And it's, I'll add that to the list of outrages.
Yeah.
All right. Well, fair enough. Look, when I was younger, I definitely flirted with the 9/11 truther conspiracies too. Look, I'll say, you can make some really fucking convincing sounding documentaries that can dupe your average person, and I consider myself in the category of average person. And once you go down that rabbit hole, man, there's no getting out. Once you go down that rabbit hole. And the thing is, like, maybe even a lot of the so-called facts that are put into the 9/11 documentaries, probably a bunch of them are skewed. Maybe even most of them are skewed. But, like, if you just take it at face value when you watch it, it sounds super duper convincing. And so really you have to go back to, like, basic premises to see, hey, does this really make sense? Okay, so, like, so the World Trade Center came down. These are the people in the country with arguably the most power and money and prestige. These people would be the heart of any kind of conspiracy, right? Because we live in a society dominated by big money and corruption. So these people would be the driving force behind conspiracies. Why would they target themselves? Why would the wealthy and the powerful take down, like, the beating heart of what they're doing? That doesn't seem to make sense. And if you make the argument that, like, well, Bush and Cheney did this because they wanted to do the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq, and we have the Project for a New American Century where the neocons laid this out very clearly. That part is true, but why wouldn't you, if you're going to do a false flag attack, why wouldn't you have an empty U.S. Navy ship and sink the U.S. Navy ship and not kill thousands of innocent civilians in the process? Right? And not kill a lot of people who are moneyed interests, who are very powerful. Again, people with a lot of money and power and prestige died when the towers came down. In no conspiracy would they be a target. They would be the ones steering the ship and doing the conspiracy and driving the conspiracy. They wouldn't be the victims of the conspiracy, right? So if you're going to do some sort of a false flag, it would make a hell of a lot more sense to just sink, like, a U.S. Navy ship with nobody on it, claim you were attacked by Iraq. There's all these questions that arise. Like, also, if you wanted to use it to attack Iraq, why didn't they first come out and say it actually was Saddam Hussein who did it, and not say it was Osama, and then they had to spend a long time building the argument that Osama was protected by Saddam Hussein? They could have just came out and said Saddam did it and jumped right to the Iraq war. So it's just, there's a lot of things that don't really add up, right? And again, you have to try to get to the root of the conspiracy, to the premises, to the core of it. Like, what are we assuming is true here before you even dive into the specifics and the particulars? And, like, look, on that front, there's a lot of things that sound super convincing when you talk about the 9/11 conspiracy theory, like the towers falling at free fall speed, right? This is one of the things that's in all the 9/11 truth documentaries. You drop a pool ball, billiard ball from the top of the World Trade Center, and in the amount of time it would take for that ball to hit the ground, it's the same amount of time that it took for the tower to collapse into the ground. And it's like, that's kind of crazy. So in other words, there was no resistance as the thing fell. It didn't take a while to do it. It fell, like, immediately, collapsed into its own footprint. Now, look, I'm not a building engineer, but they certainly made a convincing sounding case in the 9/11 truth documentaries that were like, this isn't possible without explosives. But then you come back to what Rogan said there, which is like, yeah, but who rigged it, and wouldn't people have seen it? And that would have taken a really long time beforehand, and there's really nothing on the record of that happening. So anyway, you can get lost down that conspiracy rabbit hole, is my point. But I think what Tucker's doing, and there's going to be more evidence of this in a second, he knows he's not part of Fox News anymore. He's not part of traditional media anymore. It allows him to let his freak flag fly a little bit. And if anything, that'll get you more attention in the new media landscape and the independent media landscape, is be like, I'm the guy who's going to say the shit that other people won't say. And so now he's got one foot in, like, the conspiracy camp too, because he knows that's a great way to drive views. So, all right, now I'm still not done. Let's continue here. This one is actually a rare one. I think he gets this one right, if I'm being honest.
Members of Congress are terrified of the intel agencies. I'm not guessing at that. They've told me that, including people on the Intel Committee, including people who run the Committee, the people whose job it is to oversee and keep in line these enormous, secretive agencies whose budgets we can't even know. They're black budgets. They're the parents. The agencies are the children. They're afraid of the agencies. That's not compatible with democracy. Democracy is a really simple system, even representative democracy like ours. The people rule, They do so through elections. They express their preference through voting. They send their people to the capital city to run the government on their behalf. Whenever you have unelected people who are not accountable to anyone making the biggest decisions, you don't have a democracy. You have something else, another system. I would call it a tyranny or whatever you want to call it. It's not a democracy. So that's like super obvious. It's playing out in front of everyone, and no one cares and no one does anything about it. And I think the reason is because they're threatened. And if you look at the committee chairmen who allow this shit to happen year after year, they're all, and I don't know, people say, oh, they're compromised or being blackmailed or whatever. I don't have evidence of that, but I know them, and they all have things to hide. I know that for a fact. And so it's not a stretch of imagination to imagine that, you know, some committee chairman who's allowing warrantless spying on Americans to continue, or whatever abuse they're allowing, knowing fully or hiding the truth about UAPs, ignoring the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023, like, why are they doing that? It's not impossible to imagine that some guy with a drinking problem or a weird sex life, and that's very common up there, that's why they're doing it. Because they don't want to be exposed. I don't have evidence of that. I don't have proof of that.
Right.
But that's not a crazy thing to assume that could be happening. And I said to somebody, a very powerful person, the other day in a conversation in my kitchen, an elected official, holds a really senior position, a very famous person. I was going crazy. I was so mad about all this stuff and about the warrantless spying and about the funding for these insane wars. And I said to the guy who serves in one of the legislative bodies, I got so mad my dogs were afraid. They're like, well, why are you yelling? Because I don't yell at home. But I was like, all these people are controlled. They're all, you know, got weird sex lives, and all these things are hiding, and they're being blackmailed by the intel agencies. And he said, and I'm quoting, I know. I was like, okay, so at this point we're just sort of admitting that's real? Like, why do we allow that to continue?
Yeah, that point is undeniable. Look, the CIA, the NSA, the intelligence agencies absolutely are out of control. You have people there who are basically like career bureaucrats who are there from administration to administration to administration. So that's why they're called the deep state. They're the ones who are there for a very extended period of time. And it's not like an administration that comes in and goes out. It could be 4 years. It could be 8 years. It's not like a congressperson or a senator who, again, they're up for re-election at some point. These are the people that have real permanent power and staying power. And you get some of the worst atrocities committed by, say, the CIA, meddling in foreign countries, overthrowing governments, funding death squads. I mean, you name it. The NSA, illegally spying on all Americans going back to the days of the Patriot Act, and it was just reauthorized recently. Well, how could they allow this? Why would they allow this? I mean, look, I don't know if it's as nefarious as they have dirt and they're willing to use it on these people to make them vote a certain way. But certainly they have some degree of power that appears above and beyond the Congress people, or at least it's in cahoots with all the politicians, right? So it is kind of unacceptable. Now, the final point I will make, though, is that, you know, Tucker's a guy he's like very openly and publicly kind of a Trump supporter. And I think he views Trump as like a bulwark against the deep state. And there's absolutely no reason to believe that. As president, he gave the deep state everything they wanted, right? And he's going to do it again. So the idea that, like, he's the solution, he's the answer, he's going to bust things up. Well, he was president for 4 years. He didn't. You know, Tucker talks about, oh my God, these stupid foreign wars that we shouldn't be in. Well, Trump kept us in Iraq. Trump kept us in Afghanistan. Trump bombed Syria. Trump ripped up the Iran agreement, which is now bringing us to the brink of war with Iran. He tried to coup Venezuela. Again, you want to talk about CIA operations, which are completely immoral and unethical and unnecessary and stupid and dumb. There you go. That was happening under Donald Trump. He armed, you know, now it's funny, he postures as like against the Ukraine-Russia war. He was pulling the strings behind the scenes with Mike Johnson recently to get even more funding to Ukraine. He armed Ukraine when he was president. He was very hawkish against Vladimir Putin. The idea that he's like standing up to these intel agencies. No, he works with them. He is one of them. He is an elitist with incredible power and privilege, and he wants to be in the club, and he acts like he's in the club, right? Now that he has legal problems because he committed crimes, that doesn't mean that, you know, he's an enemy of the deep state. It's not, he super served the deep state in the same way that he super served billionaires and multimillionaires while posturing as being anti-establishment. So that would be my disagreeing with him. He didn't mention anything about Trump there, but it's just funny that he can give a rant like this while also being a Trump supporter. All right. I think I got a couple more for you. Oh, boy. I don't know if we'll listen to this whole thing, but here he's talking about Alex Jones, and he basically asks, like, is he a prophet?
The end stage of mind control is censorship, right? But it begins long before that, and it begins by creating false categories that wall off your willingness, that prevent you from wanting to know certain things or talk to certain people. And name calling is the most obvious tool. Like, he's a crank, he's a racist, he's a whatever, fill it in. And then you're like, I can't listen to that person. And I have to say, your willingness to platform or to have a conversation with Alex Jones, I think was a revolutionary act, actually. Not that everything Alex Jones says is right. It's not. Not everything I say is right or anyone says is right. But Alex Jones is an interesting person. And even if he's not interesting, he has been walled off from the rest of us through name calling. And your willingness to be like, no, actually, we're just going to listen to Alex Jones and you can decide for yourself.
Well, Alex has been my friend for more than 20 years.
Well, by the way, like, okay, I could understand that argument in some contexts, right? If nobody is platforming Noam Chomsky and you give Noam Chomsky a platform, yeah, that's a really good thing. It's sort of a revolutionary act. It's like he's being censored perhaps because he speaks truth to power too much and the mainstream networks don't want that. So I could see that argument making sense in some contexts. But in other contexts, it just doesn't make sense, right? Like, you wouldn't say this about platforming Nick Fuentes, right? It would very revolutionary of you to have on that guy who's like, I am a Nazi and I love Nazism and Adolf Hitler is based. People look at that and be like, I don't know, maybe in that instance there might be a reason why people shy away from having him on, because he's advocating some truly atrocious thing. Another example, if you have on Netanyahu, right, and have like a casual, flippant, nothing nonchalant conversation with him where you try to humanize him and make him sound normal and talk about his dogs or whatever, people be like, okay, this isn't a revolutionary or brave act. This is just like you are whitewashing a guy who's a literal war criminal and a genocidal maniac, right? So in some contexts, that argument makes sense. In other contexts, it doesn't really make sense. When it comes to Alex Jones, the thing that annoys me, and he's not as bad as Nick Fuentes, he's not as bad as Netanyahu. Every now and then he says something that's true. But I feel like he gets played up all the time, like the rare areas when he gets something right online. And it's like, why are we not talking about the times he's been horrifically and comically wrong? Why are we not talking about how he thinks Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton are literal demons from hell and they smell like sulfur? It's like all the super insane things get a massive pass. And look, man, he's 20% or less is the shit he gets right. So why is nobody talking about the 80%? I don't know. That drives me crazy. It's just it's a very online thing, right?
Exactly. But you were not allowed to talk to him. And when you hear Alex Jones talk, you may not agree with everything he says. I don't know that I do. But you definitely understand why they told you couldn't listen to Alex Jones.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I had him as one of the first guests when I came over to Spotify.
Love that.
I was like, let's go.
What did they say?
Well, a lot of people weren't happy. We lost sponsors. It was an issue. But I think it did the job. It regardless of what he said that's incorrect, clearly the Sandy Hook thing was incorrect. Alex, I know Alex personally, so I know what he was going through. And, everybody wants to talk about mental health and they want to praise people for being honest about their mental health issues and support them on their mental health journey to wellness. Alex has gone through some real issues. And one of the reasons why he's gone through some issues is because that guy is uncovering real shit that's terrifying every fucking day.
And like you just said, he's also being dead wrong about Sandy Hook and legally defaming the victims' families. I don't know, that kind of matters to me. Also, you remember when he went on this intergalactic gremlin rant on Joe's show? Look, Rogan can do whatever he wants to do. He's friends with Alex Jones, but let's not pretend like the reason he brought him on the show is because, number one, he's his friend, and number two, the guy is fucking colossally entertaining. That's really what it boils down to, right? And I'm not criticizing that, but let's not have a jerk-off fest where everybody's jacking each other off about how amazing and correct Alex Jones is, because he's wrong way more than he's right. And again, this is a rare issue where like mainstream media is more correct than the online sphere that like to highlight the 10 or 20% of things where Jones is right and act like, and again, Tucker literally goes on to say, is he some sort of a prophet? No, I think he's an overweight alcoholic Texan who's probably either severely bipolar or bordering on paranoid schizophrenic. That's kind of harsh, but that's what I think he is.
He's just fucking constantly stressed, freaking out. And when you see so many lies and so much propaganda and so many psyops that are being done on people, you start seeing them where they don't exist.
Yeah, and also, at a certain point, you have to say, he's the one doing propaganda, right? I'll never be able to get over how he postures as so anti-establishment and anti-elitist and anti-globalist and anti-New World Order, but then he sucks off Trump on a daily basis as if Trump is some sort of a bulwark against the establishment. He's not even close. He cut taxes for the wealthy. He deregulated Wall Street. He destroyed the regulatory state, even like the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act. They made that way weaker than it was. He served the predatory payday loan industry when they gave him $1 million for his inauguration. Total, rank, brazen corruption. He took $100 million 2 separate times from Sheldon Adelson and then let Sheldon Adelson control our Israel policy, which is why we got the embassy moved to Jerusalem, which pissed off Hamas and helped spark October 7th. And we have the Abraham Accords, which was a whole fucking middle finger to Palestinians, again, sparking anger and leading to October 7th. Let's not pretend like this guy, he's not anti-establishment in any way, shape, or form. And Alex Jones tried to simultaneously suck off Trump and act like he's anti-establishment while pretending like I'm against all the power centers. Except the fucking biggest power center there is, right? Alex likes to say he's against the Russia-Ukraine war. Well, Trump just pulled the strings behind the scenes to get billions more dollars sent to Ukraine. Anything to say about that? Anything to say about him arming Ukraine? Anything to say about that? Again, he kept us in Iraq. He kept us in Afghanistan. The list goes on. Like, sometimes he's the one doing the propaganda, guys. He's the one doing the propaganda. Let's be honest about that.
Well, and he's also channeling some stuff. You can't call 9/11 in detail because you're super informed.
Before the fact.
He called it.
Yes.
He literally called it in the summer of 2001.
He's channeling stuff. Look, there's that very famous memo that was left on Bush's desk, bin Laden determined to attack within the U.S., right? After the fact, we all, in retrospect, we were like, oh my God, he had a memo warning about it. Could Alex have gotten that right? And that was a genuinely good call? Yes. But, you know, there's a lot of damage done when you take his good calls and then pretend like, you know, very broadly, this guy's spot on. He's not. He's not. But of course, Alex is promoting this to... Anyway, we got another story. Tomorrow on Alex Jones, which you're not going to want to miss. It is incredible. The way his fans reacted to him when he said, okay, I don't want to spoil it, but we got that coming up. All right, final one. This one is actually an area where I think Tucker is just right, and I'm shocked he said this.
You could say the same about the atomic bomb, right?
Yes, you could.
And you could say that we have to develop it like Oppenheimer felt before the Nazis did.
I love that. How'd that work? How'd that work?
Well,
I love, by the way, that people on my side, I'll just admit it, on the right, you know, have spent the last 80 years defending dropping nuclear weapons on civilians. Like, are you joking?
Right.
That's just like prima facie evil.
Yeah.
If you can't, well, if we hadn't done that, then this, that, the other thing, that was actually a great savings. Like, no, it's wrong to drop nuclear weapons on people. And if you find yourself arguing that it's a good thing to drop nuclear weapons on people, then you are evil. Like, it's not a tough one, right? Is that a hard call for you? It's not a hard call for me. So with that in mind, like, why would you want nuclear weapons? It's like just a mindless, childish sort of intellectual exercise to justify, like, oh no, it's really good because someone else will get it. How about no? How about like spending all of your effort to prevent this from happening? Would you kill baby Hitler, you know, famously?
Right.
So I don't know why we're sitting back and allowing this to happen if we really believe it will extinguish the human race or enslave the human race. Like, how can that be good?
Damn. It's just basically like, hey, if you supported dropping the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you're evil. Purposefully massacring hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. You're evil. That's evil. It's not a close one. By the way, I'm sure you guys have also... There's a great Sean video, whatever his name is now, breaking down all of the specifics about the nuclear attack on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Super long video, but it gives you everything you'd ever want to know about it. And you should definitely go check that out. Bottom line is, Japan was already absolutely defeated. They were defeated. It was not at all necessary to do that. And also, as a matter of principle, you should never purposefully attack innocent civilians. That does sort of make you evil. That's terrorism, and it makes you evil. It's not okay. Oh, hey, when we do it, it's okay. No. I don't accept that. I don't buy that. That's absurd. And Tucker agrees. That's actually shocking. By the way, there was massive backlash over this from the right. There were a lot of people on the right who were going after him for it. Which, sorry, right-wingers, Tucker's totally right about this. And there's another thing he says in the podcast where he says, like, I don't read any responses online. Like, I don't watch stuff. So, you know, whatever I say, and he won't even know if there's a backlash. That's healthy. That's healthy. And every creator should take that, approach to one extent or another, because it's way better for your mental health. And you're not going to get like bullied into a corner or just go along with the crowd, right? You're going to say what you actually think. So I was Shocked to hear that, too, that he's not plugged in, but this was probably the most base comment of the entire thing. There's another part where he goes after Barry Weiss. I thought that was good, too. But yeah, there you have it. We're all over the map here. But perhaps the biggest part, of course, was what I led with. Denying evolution. What? Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.